Welcome back everyone to another episode of Vegetarian Cooking with JJ. In this week's episode, I'm making a flavor-popping vegan ramen bowl. I'm going to be using a couple of different Japanese ingredients, but if you need to improvise, feel free to do so. And if you have any questions, if you get stuck, feel free to pop them down below and I'll be more than happy to get back to you whenever I can. So this style of ramen is going to be in the style of Tonkotsu, so it's going to have a thicker broth. But you'll learn more about the different styles of ramen bowls later on in this video. I'm really excited to get started and of course try it in the end. So without further ado, let's head over to the kitchen and get cooking! For this recipe, we're going to need at least 6 cups of veggie stock. I'm using our freezer scraps to make this stock. It has a melange of different veggie scraps and some herb stems. I'm dry toasting some nori on this pan, and this will be for our seaweed seasoning. While that's toasting, I'm crushing 4 cloves of garlic. I'm leaving the whole chunks crushed. I'm also dry toasting some black sesame seeds. I'm microplaning our ginger. I'm going to use 1 tablespoon's worth. Feel free to adjust it to your taste. If you don't have a designated spice grinder, clean out a coffee grinder thoroughly. We're adding our toasted nori to our temporary spice grinder. And I'm adding our toasted black sesame seeds. And a 1/4 teaspoon of our wasabi powder. Feel free to add more. Grind it all up. And this is what it looks like. You'll want to clean this grinder out thoroughly before you go back to grinding up coffee beans. Kombu is a kelp commonly used in Japanese cuisine. Now, I opted for nori because it's so readily available. You can pretty much find it anywhere. But if you want to opt for kombu, be sure to wash it off, rehydrate it in some hot water, dry it off, and then roast it. You want to get it to the point where it breaks up easily. So then you can swap this with the nori and have your kelp seasoning. And as far as taste goes, it has a little bit of a sweeter flavor and a brinier flavor. So let me know if you opt for the nori or the kombu. Just watch out if you get the pre-made seasonings because some of them contain bonito flakes, which is fish. Tonkotsu ramen has a thicker, smokier looking broth, and traditionally pork is used, but for the vegan version, we're incorporating the smoky flavor using liquid smoke, and we're balancing out the saltiness of this ramen using our raw sugar as well. Now, Tonkotsu ramen was created accidentally in 1947 in Fukuoka, Japan, in a restaurant. The cooks had forgotten about the broth and it was boiling over. This resulted in a smoky, kind of cloudy appearance. They were worried they screwed up big time with all the customers there. They gave it a try and it actually worked out. And it became quite popular from there. In our heated Dutch oven, I'm adding some refined sesame oil. The refined sesame oil has a high smoke point of 410 Fahrenheit. The toasted sesame oil has a lower smoke point. I'm adding our ginger and our garlic. Get it fragrant. And I'm adding our vegan sole strips. This will provide the cruelty-free meaty texture. using 1 tablespoon of Doubanjiang or chili and fermented bean paste. I'm mixing it with 2 teaspoons of miso paste and some veggie stock. Make sure it's all blended up and add it to the Dutch oven with the veggie strips. Make sure you mix it up well. These strips will absorb all that beautiful flavor. I'm removing the strips from our Dutch oven and setting them aside. The shoyu ramen has a very salty soy sauce base and it is much clearer. As for the shio ramen, it has more of the from the sea flavor and the broth is much lighter as well. The miso ramen has a rich umami flavor because of the fermented soybeans. Now I mentioned 4 different types of ramens and you might assume that the miso one might be naturally vegan. However, this is not always the case because it's common for Japanese cooks to add in the dried fish flakes in the mix, so be careful about that. Also, as for the other ones, it's common for them to use the pork bones or chicken bones. However, it is so easy to veganize these styles of ramen. All you have to do is think about the types of seasoning, and if you're trying to emulate texture, there's so many options out there. All of the wonderful flavors still in our Dutch oven, and we're going to add 6 cups of veggie stock. Our homemade veggie stock, of course. All of those beautiful flavors are going to release from the Dutch oven and mix into our broth. I'm adding 1 ounce or 2 tablespoons of our sake into our veggie broth. I'm giving our broth a test to see how salty it is. I did add salt when I made the veggie stock. I've decided we're adding 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. And I'm adding 1 tablespoon of liquid smoke. In 1958, the instant ramen noodles were created by Momofuku Ando, and he was a mix of Taiwanese and Japanese, and he made it easy for everyone to have ramen noodles, no matter what their lifestyle. And speaking of catering to lifestyles, if you go to Japan and check out some ramen restaurants, you will notice that they cater to solo diners, or diners in smaller groups. And this comes from the history. During the Industrial Revolution, there were salarymen. They just needed something quick to eat. They needed to eat in peace. So you will notice if you go to these restaurants, there are several single seats with their tables and partitions. And this is pre-COVID, by the way. These men were so busy, they didn't even have time to bring lunch from home. They just had to eat their lunch and get right back to work. Did you know it was once illegal to eat ramen in Japan? This was during the war and a little bit afterwards as well. Food vendors were outlawed. However, there were black markets with ramen, so people still managed to get some ramen to survive. I have a half a teaspoon of black garlic powder we're adding in. I'm adding a 1/4 teaspoon of our ground white pepper. Add 1 tablespoon of mushroom powder. Mushroom gravy powder works as well. I'm adding 1 tablespoon of tahini. You can use toasted sesame paste if you wish. I'm adding a tablespoon of our seaweed seasoning I blended up. I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of raw sugar to balance things out. Add 1 cup of vegan milk. Unsweetened soy works well. and slice up some green onions for a garnish. I'm steaming our mung bean sprouts over here for our garnish. When ready, you may want to plunge the mung bean sprouts into an ice water bath to stop the cooking process. I have our buckwheat ramen noodles I'm adding to our broth. I'm adding 3 pieces. These noodles should only take 3 to 4 minutes to cook.
In the 19th century, Chinese immigrants brought with them a similar noodle soup, which inspired the ramen bowl. Now, ramen actually comes from the Chinese word la mian, which means pulled noodles, literally. And these types of noodles are traditionally made with wheat flour, and they use alkaline water. And that is the secret to creating that nice springy noodle you're going for. And nowadays, there's so many different varieties of ramen noodles. And I personally opted for the King Soba brand noodles. And these ones are made purely from buckwheat, which also makes them gluten-free. Now, if you want a completely gluten-free ramen bowl, just check on the sauces and make sure they're gluten-free as well. And you may want to opt for tofu instead, or the Big Mountain brand has quite a nice variety of vegan meats that are also gluten-free as well.
Add your baby bok choy shortly after the noodles, as they should take about the same time to cook. Be sure to wash your bok choy very thoroughly. Check between the leaves. We're adding our veggie strips back into our Dutch oven. Mix it up thoroughly. Now it's time to add our ramen to the bowl. I'm adding our steamed mung bean sprouts and our green onions. I also cooked some just egg and I'm placing it on top, made from mung beans as well. And I'm topping mine off with some chili flakes.
It's that time again, everyone. I get to try our delicious ramen bowl. Of course, I'm not going to eat the whole thing. It's a little bit too much. Try to get a little bit of everything, although with this it might be a little bit impossible. Quite tricky. I don't have a big enough mouth. Anyway, get a little piece of as much as we can variety here. Adding in the tahini was a really nice idea. The spice level is really mild, so if you want to up the spice, go ahead. Got the chunkiness with our sole strips here. The buckwheat noodles added depth of flavor as well. Of course, I warmed up some sake. Quite nice. Easy to splash your chin with this one. It's a nice, comforting meal. It was a really wise decision to fry up those strips, remove them, and then add them towards the end. That way we get a better bite for our veggie strips here. It has a rich umami flavor, the perfect level of salt, a little bit of spice, and it really does hit the spot if you're looking for a filling and energizing meal. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and remember, if you like this video in any way, shape, or form, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel, hit that little bell notification icon so you don't miss a single video. There's going to be a new video popping up every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern, so you don't want to miss it. This is JJ signing off, keeping things interesting in my kitchen and in yours. Bon appetit.